President said, as an attack on our country is a new low for President Trump. This investigation has made clear that the Russians perpetrated a strategic attack on the 2016 elections to support the Trump campaign. The special counsel has handed down multiple indictments and secured guilty pleas of Trump campaign officials in connection to Russia's meddling. If the president fires Special Counsel Mueller or Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, it will ignite a constitutional crisis. It will declare that President Trump believes that his administration and his campaign are completely above the law. House Judiciary Democrats, led by Ranking Member Nadler, have introduced a companion to the bipartisan Senate legislation to protect the special counsel's legislation. That's Nadler, Jackson Lee, and Coon legislation in the House. The special counsel must be allowed to follow the facts unhindered. Almost every week we see new evidence of the Trump administration's culture of corruption, cronyism, and incompetence. That EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt has displayed a staggering ethical blindness. President Trump must fire him. Pruitt's abuses of office are representative of an administration that uses their powerful positions to enrich themselves and their friends. In the case of Pruitt, who pays? His policies are about depriving our children of clean air, clean water, clean drinking water, food safety, just completely disregard the responsibility of the Environmental Protection Agency, and they are for the benefit of his rich friends. Multiple members of the cabinet, of the Trump cabinet, are under federal investigation for graft, corruption, and sticking taxpayers with multi-million-dollar bill for their extravagance and lavish lifestyles. Republicans in Congress must end their complicity in all of this and finally take action to hold this administration accountable for its abuses. You may not recall, but some may recall that in 2005-2006, one of our mantras during the campaign was to drain the swamp, to end the Republican culture of cronyism, corruption, and incompetence. And that's exactly what we did. The president has appropriated that term of art, drain the swamp. And what does he do but have an administration that is wallowing in it? Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
On Bob Mueller and Rob Rosenstein, if President Trump makes moves to fire either of them, would that be grounds for impeachment?
Well, I think it would be a constitutional crisis, but let's hope that he does not. The three things that could happen. The president, like the investigation proceeding, which Republicans in the Senate at least are encouraging him to do. We haven't seen too much of that in the House. Secondly, he could fire Mueller, or third, Rosenstein. I think they are synonymous. They are the same thing. Firing Rosenstein should be viewed by the public as the curtailment of the investigation. Effectively firing Mueller to do the job he's there to do. It would be a constitutional. Right now, as you're probably aware, since Christmas we have been prepared for the president taking such an action, hoping that he would not, but prepared as he did. And we have hundreds of legal authorities, experts, judges, U.S. attorneys, academic experts on the subject of our Constitution standing ready to speak out should the president do that. As you may know, 800 events are planned around the country by some of the outside groups should the president do that. But let's hope that that gives us some leverage to say to the president, you might want to think once, hopefully twice, about doing this.
But it would be
a constitutional crisis. We take it one step at a time. First, we don't want him to do it. Then we have the bill that I mentioned, the Nadler in the House, Grassley, maybe Feinstein in the Senate if they work out their legislation that says three things. One, that it restates the status of the special counsel. The special counsel cannot be fired without cause. If the special counsel is fired, he or she, as we go forward, he or she would have the 10 days in review. The judges to review what that cause was and if it was just. And then third, preservation of the documents. If they went down this path, the preservation of all of the documents that are passed. Hopefully, I believe we had bipartisanship in the Senate. We have a similar bill in the House. If it happens that we fire Rosenstein, for example, which there's a flotation, if not a reality today, then I think it would be important for whoever takes place and who would have say over the investigation to be someone who is confirmed by the Senate of the United States. So it's just not a lack that the President puts in there to stop the investigation. But both, they are synonymous. It is a constitutional crisis. Either way.
Will we see your party do anything specifically when and if that happens?
Well, we are taking it one, first of all, for the good of our country. We don't want the President to do this. So our focus now is to make sure he understands the kind of opposition, not political, but the validation that would come from the establishment and the American people. When I say establishment, legal scholars, judges, U.S. attorneys, former attorneys general, nationally and in states. It's an overwhelming response. This is not honoring the Constitution of the United States. They would take it one step.
On the Senate side, we're seeing Republicans are more interested in supporting a bill to protect Mueller. Are you seeing anything from House Republicans that they're more interested, especially with the news that Speaker Ryan is retiring this year?
Well, when we did, and I think I shared this with some of you before, but forgive me if I was a different group. When we were doing the omnibus bill.
All right, folks, we are now taking a live look right now at the Washington Monument there in D.C. Hi, everybody. Mike Page here as we continue on with News Now. Thanks so much for joining us here for the afternoon session of News Now. Coming up in about 30 minutes, we are going to be talking to a President Trump supporter who has a viral pic going on the internet right now. Thousands of retweets, and she's getting a lot of backlash too. Wait till you find out why. We'll have that for you in just a moment here. Live interview 30 minutes away, only here on News Now. But thank you so much here for joining us here worldwide, always on News Now. Remember, when it's breaking news time, of course, we're bringing it to you right here on News Now. We're going to show you a State Department news briefing. While we do wait for any live events to come to us, we'll have it for you right here on News Now.
Nice to see you all. Did you notice anything different? No? Look at this little book. I went on vacation and the book went on a diet. I thought you all would enjoy that. So we'll see how this works today.
So quality has replaced quantity?
I don't know about that. It's kind of like when my kids go to school and I use that opportunity to clean their room so they don't notice. That's exactly what the past week. Yeah. So great to see you all again. Hope you're having a terrific day. A couple announcements to bring you first. As many of you know, the Qatari Emir is in Washington today. We warmly welcome him, His Highness Qatari Emir Al Thani, to the United States. The President met with Emir a short while ago, and Acting Secretary Sullivan will meet with him this afternoon. Qatar is a highly valued strategic partner to the United States and also a friend. You may recall that we held the inaugural U.S.-Qatar Strategic Dialogue here at the State Department on January the 30th, during which we collaborated on defense, counterterrorism, human rights, trade, aviation, and also investment. We're building upon that dialogue and look forward to discussing these and other important issues of bilateral cooperation during the Emir's visit. Since the dialogue and building on our July 2017 counterterrorism MOU, Qatar has continued to advance its counterterrorism and counterterror financing efforts. In addition to that, I'd like to announce that Acting Secretary of State John Sullivan will travel to Lima, Peru tomorrow from April 11th to the 14th to accompany the Vice President at the 8th Summit of the Americas. We strongly support Peru's ambitious summit agenda, focusing on democratic governance against corruption. During the summit, the United States will promote priorities of mutual interest to the region, including supporting democracy, addressing political and humanitarian crises, and restoring democracy in Venezuela. Also, they'll discuss stemming corruption and transnational crime, promoting economic prosperity, and also women's empowerment. While in Lima, the acting secretary will meet separately with leaders from Peru, Brazil, Haiti, and Mexico. He will also meet with the heads of delegation of the governments of the Bahamas, Barbados, Guyana, Jamaica, and St. Lucia, as well with leaders from El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. As you may know, civil society will have a vital role in ensuring summit priorities reflect the practical needs of the citizens and businesses of the Americas. The acting secretary will engage with members of the Cuban and Venezuelan independent civil society groups to underscore some of those priorities. So we look forward to providing readouts and information from the acting secretary's trip as it goes forward. Lastly, we have some students in the back, I understand, from Georgetown. Welcome. We're always happy to have students join us here. And that kind of gets into my last announcement. This week, the State Department is proud to announce the inaugural list of U.S. higher education institutions that sent the most students overseas on Benjamin Gilman International Scholarship Program in the academic year 2016 to 2017. Were any of you Gilman scholars by any chance? No. Well, we're happy to have you here anyway. The Gilman program broadens U.S. student population that studies and interns abroad by providing scholarships to outstanding undergraduate students who, due to financial constraints, might not otherwise be able to participate. Since the program's establishment in 2001, more than 1,300 U.S. institutions have sent more than 25,000 Gilman scholars to 145 countries around the globe. We especially want to congratulate the University of California, Berkeley, Georgetown, Spelman College, Portland Community College, and San Antonio College for heading up the top of their respective categories. Congratulations. The State Department is committed to helping the next generation of diverse American leaders foster mutual understanding and develop important skills in support of our national security and economic prosperity. Congratulations to all the Gilman Program students and institutions. The full list and additional information about these scholarships is available at gilmanscholarship.org. So I'd encourage you to take a look. And finally, as many of you know,
you said that was the last one.
No, this is more of a personal note, and you will be all happy to hear about this. For the past year, I've been doing this job with the assistance of our fantastic press team and with Robert, as you all know Robert very well. But I am more than thrilled to announce that we have an acting deputy spokesperson now, and that is my colleague Elizabeth Fitzsimmons. Many of you will get the chance to meet her in the coming days, but this has been a long work in progress. Elizabeth, would you please stand up? For those of you who have not met Elizabeth, and many of my colleagues around the world will know Elizabeth, she is a career member of the Senior Foreign Service. That's significant here at the State Department. She served as Deputy Executive Secretary to Secretaries Kerry and also to Secretary Tillerson, and she served as a Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Bureau of South and Central Asia. She served overseas in Taiwan, Hong Kong, India, and also Bulgaria. She, by the way, is married to a DS officer, and she is a mother of 5 children, and she's also, doesn't look it, she's a grandmother. So we're thrilled to have Elizabeth joining us and look forward to having her take your calls, too. And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions, or I could just hand them over to Elizabeth.
Thanks, Heather. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And Hoya Saxa for our guests in the back.
Do you hear that?
Let's start with Syria.
Okay.
Oh, actually, just on Acting Secretary Sullivan's trip, you mentioned that he was going to meet with Cuban and Venezuelan civil society.
Yes.
I noticed that you guys put out a statement critical of the Cubans for blocking or frustrating or interfering somehow with the civil society getting there. Are there any plans to meet with actual members of those delegations if they're going to be there?
I believe that some may be headed to Peru for those meetings, but not all. Let me double check on that and get back with you.
Okay. But are there going to be Cuban and Venezuelan officials at the summit that he might meet with? Or no?
That I am not sure of. Hold on, let me check his schedule right here and see if I have anything for you on that. Let me check and see what I have for you on that schedule, which has still been coming together.
It can wait. It's not an urgent question. It's just,
Okay. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hand his schedule off to my colleagues. They can take a look at it, and we can come back to this.
All right. Let's start with on Syria. What can you tell us regarding any latest contact between the acting secretary and foreign officials? Has there been any on a possible response?
Yes. So this is obviously an interagency process. The United States, through the White House, through the State Department, and others as well, have been having conversations with our allies and partners overseas. Acting Secretary John Sullivan spoke on 2 occasions with Foreign Minister Boris Johnson of the UK. Yesterday, I believe a readout was provided of that call. We are looking for a coordinated response, whatever that response might be, to the situation in Syria.
Has he spoken to anyone other than Foreign Secretary Johnson?
Not to my awareness. I've spoken with him on 2 occasions today. I don't have any additional calls to read out for you.
Okay. Well, do you expect him to? Because, I mean, the president has spoken now twice to President Macron and at least once to Prime Minister May.
Yes, so the president spoke with Prime Minister Theresa May. The president also spoke with Macron. I'm not sure if Acting Secretary Sullivan was on that call or not, but we're closely linked up with the White House, with the NSC, and other partners and departments on this.
Do you believe that, so a lot of the European officials believe that you can't really do anything, act against the Syrians and the Russians until you've got some kind of evidence. What is the US point of view as far as collecting that evidence, and do you believe that evidence would be, we had Russians in at the site yesterday. Do you believe that is enough evidence to make a move either through the UN or directly?
Well, the OPCW, I believe it was just yesterday or earlier today, announced that it would be on the ground gathering evidence. We see the OCPW as the impartial body to be able to collect this kind of evidence. Let me remind you how difficult it is to get. To get to these, first of all, you're in a war zone. This is a very dangerous environment for anyone to go into. So for these people to be able to go into these environments, to collect samples, perhaps through partner organizations that they work with, and also themselves, I understand they have their own inspectors who go about doing this, collecting that information and then analyzing that information. So that's an important role. They're the gold standard in collecting this type of information, and we would certainly rely upon them, as we have in other instances, to take a look at that.
So you're first waiting for the OPCW to come back with something before you can make any kind of...
Look, I'm not saying that. The United States government has its own mechanisms to be able to look into things. Some of these would be intelligence matters that I'm not going to get into. You know full well why. The United States has been sharing information with its allies and partners, as have our allies been sharing information with us. But the OPCW, we recognize and are pleased to see that they are able to get to the area, or eventually be able to get to the area, we hope as soon as possible, to be able to collect samples. We have talked about before the joint investigative mechanism that Russia thwarted. And the United Nations today is looking at a vote to come up with a new form of a joint investigative mechanism, and that is something that we would strongly support, because not only do you need that body to investigate what exactly was used, but you need a body to be able to determine who is responsible for it, and that's exactly what the joint investigative mechanism did. Now, we do know that some sort of a substance was used, a chemical was used. We're just not sure at this point today exactly what was used. Okay, Andrea, go ahead.
Following up on the forensics of this, you know something was used, you don't know exactly what or by whom, but absent hard evidence, which may take a long time if ever, is it possible that there would not be some kind of response? Is there a threshold for taking action if it's clear that some kind of chemical was used and that there are only certain players who have access to such chemicals?
Well, look, we know that only certain players, to use your word, have access to these kinds of chemical weapons. We know that it requires certain kinds of delivery mechanisms to use those types of weapons. not everyone out there has access to those delivery mechanisms. So we have that information. We're familiar with it. I'm not going to get ahead of the president and the White House and what the interagency determines is the best route going forward, but I can tell you that we are in close coordination with our allies and partners on this.
Can I just follow up on that? Given the pace of phone calls and our own reporting in different capitals, it does seem likely that this will be a multilateral response, if there is a response, that it will be different from what happened on April 6, 2017.
I can just say
a fair conclusion?
I'm not going to confirm that for you. I think our calls are certainly obvious that we stand strongly with our allies. We've had calls with the French and with the British. We've had information sharing and also are, in conversations with people, as you would expect.
And can I ask if you could take a question? NBC News reported today, one of my colleagues, Courtney Kuby, that the Russians have been jamming the GPS of our drones, which may or may not be one reason why it's been difficult to collect photographic evidence, and that this has been going on for several weeks.
I'm not aware of that, Andrea. I'll see if I can get something for you. Some of that may fall under intelligence, and we may not be able to answer that, but I can't even confirm the premise of your question. This is the first I'm hearing of it.
Heather, can I just ask really quickly,
Yeah.
are you saying in response to both Leslie and Andrea that even absent a determination from the OPCW or this JIM, the Joint Investigative Message that is likely to be
type of JIM, yeah.
that is likely to be vetoed today, even without any conclusion from them, the administration believes it has it can act?
I'm not going to get ahead of anything that the White House may announce. That's not my role to do that. I could just say it's very clear that some sort of chemical weapon was used, and that is a tremendous concern to the United States.
That's certainly.
Go ahead.
Hi, Heather.
Hi.
As the United States is coordinating with allies on this, there's a move in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to write a new authorization for the use of military force. What kind of input has the State Department had? Has this sort of come up as the Secretary had left, Secretary Tillerson has left? Where's the administration on an AUMF that could be moved in the committee as early as next week or
Yeah, so we haven't changed our position. Our position remains exactly what it was. Director Pompeo and I have not had a chance. Perhaps he's discussed this with other colleagues here at the State Department to review his opinion and how he envisions it. Also, our lawyers obviously would play a strong role in that. So we just have not had those conversations yet. But as it stands right now, our policy remains exactly the same.
So as the U.S. considers it responsive, believes it has the authority to act as it can and should?
I would defer to the White House on that, but yes. Okay, go ahead.
While you coordinate with the U.S. allies, do you also have, or do you plan to have contact with the Russian officials, government, to avoid any escalation if there is to be a response by the Western
I don't have any
countries?
calls or meetings to read out on the Russians at this point. Okay. Hi, Saeed. Oh, wait, hold on. Michelle. Okay, we'll come back to you. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, how are you?
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Will the U.S. be waiting for the OPCW investigators to come back from Syria to react, or you have enough proofs or to react?
I think I answered that question. That is something we believe, we know, that some form of a chemical weapon was used in that attack in Syria that has killed at least 85 people that we are aware of so far. So the United States is convinced and knows that some sort of a chemical weapon was used. We also recognize the importance of the OPCW, and we don't know their timeline for being able to get in, collect information. We have our intelligence, and then they have their information from the ground. So we have different kinds of information.
The president was pretty clear that there was going to be a price to pay. I mean, he literally said that. Why, since April 6th of last year when they ordered the missile strikes in Syria, and now, or until this last incident, there have been numerous uses of chemical weapons that have been alleged in Syria. What makes this one hit that threshold that a price has to be paid?
I think, Matt, to answer that question, we have to look at the number of attacks that have taken place, the pace, how quickly these attacks are now taking place. This will be the 9th attack using some sort of chemical substance this year alone. It used to be that when attacks would take place, the world would stand up and take attention, and it has become, in the view of the U.S. government and many others as well, far too common. So I think it's taken the world to stand up and say this is unacceptable, this is horrific, and we can't stand for this anymore.
Why, if those numbers, if that figure is correct, if this is the 9th this year alone, it's what makes this different than the 6th or the 5th that you would now say there has to be a price to be paid, and you didn't?
Matt, I would just say that a lot of this has been based on conversations with our allies and partners overseas, and beyond that, I'm not going to be able to get into it.
Can I move on? Another part of Syria?
Okay, then I'll go to Saeed.
Okay, this has to do with Iran, and Israel struck Iranian targets at Syria's T4 airbase on Sunday, which is the second time in as many months. Do you share Israel's concern about Iran's presence in Syria?
We have talked about this a lot, that Iran supports Hezbollah. Iran has sent not only fighters, but also equipment into Syria. Iran has been a bad actor in Syria and other parts around the world. They have further destabilized the country of Syria. They have also bolstered the regime of Bashar al-Assad, enabling the regime to be able to commit attacks against innocent civilians, not just in eastern Ghouta and elsewhere, but around the country as well. Of course, we're absolutely concerned about Iran's presence or meddling, whether it be through proxies, in the country of Syria.
So it's possible when President Trump talks about everyone will pay a price involved in this, that the United States could also strike Iranian targets in Syria as it responds?
I'm not aware of what. If we were to take any kind of action, I'm not sure what our targets would be. Okay.
Can I move on to Gaza?
Yeah.
Last Friday, the Israelis killed a Palestinian journalist. You know, he had a vest that was clearly marked at press. I wanted your reaction and comment on that if you have one.
Yeah, I can say we're certainly aware of reports that a journalist operating in Gaza was killed in the clashes in Gaza. I don't have the specifics on his particular case, but I can tell you we're looking into it.
So you're not sure that he was targeted and that the marking was clear that he was wearing a vest that said...
I am just saying I don't have the specifics on his case, but I can assure you we are looking into that.
Do you have any comment on the fact that the Israelis are targeting the press?
Oh, look, I can say that we would call for renewed emphasis on having peaceful dialogue, trying to get two parties back to talk about the future of peace for the Israelis and Palestinians. And certainly the events of the past week and a half or so have been very troubling.
Okay, which, you know, you have not issued a statement and so on. I remember I raised on the 29th of last month that there was going to be such a thing the following day.
You did say that, and I said, Saeed, I hope you were wrong.
Well, I hope, my hope, you know, went just withered away.
Yeah.
You know, so, but they did use excessive force. Do you think that the Israelis are using excessive force to quell these demonstrations that are really far? I mean, you know, reports show that Mr. Jason Greenblatt suggested that they keep away 500 feet. This journalist, Yasser Murtaja, was hit at like 350 meters, which is almost 1,000 feet. So they are demonstrating in their own enclave, basically. You are not calling on the Israelis to stop targeting civilians?
What Israel, from my understanding, has just announced that it will conduct an internal investigation into the use of force. And so we will stand by and we will watch what comes out of that.
I'm sorry, you said you were aware of reports that a journalist was killed?
Yes.
You haven't been able to confirm it, but the guy was buried over the weekend at a funeral that was quite, you know, it was attended by a lot of people.
Yeah, and I'm aware of that, yes.
But not just of reports. I mean, you know that this guy was killed.
That is correct, yes.
And I think you might know a little bit more, maybe not, but because the company that he worked for, that he co-founded and co-owned, had last month been vetted and was approved for a grant from USAID. Now, Well, first of all, can you?
All right, folks, we are just moments away from talking about this viral picture. We're going to be talking to the girl here in this picture for this graduation pic. She wanted a little bit different, so she went with the shirt Women for Trump, and then it shows the handgun there as well. We'll be talking to her in just a little bit. Brenna Spencer coming up next. All right, everybody, welcome back here to News Now as we get you caught up on all the top headlines here of the day. And next, we are talking about this viral picture that has really taken off. Well, you know, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, how about more than almost 15,000 retweets? And joining me right now is Brenna Spencer, the girl here in this picture. Brenna, how you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. So tell us a little bit about how this all came together. We see here you got the Women for Trump shirt and then a handgun here. Now, this was a graduation pic that you wanted to do a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. So with graduating, I wanted my graduation photos to be personal and reflect who I am and kind of my journey through college. So being very passionate about the Second Amendment and conservative politics is what inspired me to take this photo.
All right, and now when you posted it, tell us how this, was it immediate, the amount of retweets and likes that you got?
Yes and no. It was pretty immediate with specifically like my conservative followers, and then eventually the left did end up picking it up and it got big after a few hours.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. You are close to almost 100,000 likes right there. We're showing your the Twitter page right now, and that's very impressive. Now, on the other side, though, you've been getting a lot of backlash, too, from this. Maybe explain that a little.
Yeah, so I've gotten a lot of backlash. At first, there were a lot of questions if it was legal, which it is completely legal where I was. So I actually had people say, call the cops on me. A lot of people have sent me death threats, told me to go kill myself, saying that this is all my white privilege. Yeah, I've gotten quite a bit of backlash from it.
And how does that make you feel? And did you think that was going to come from a simple post like this?
I didn't necessarily think it was going to come from this post, but obviously once it started getting attention, I did realize that the backlash was going to come. It doesn't really stop me, to be honest. Yeah, I got the backlash, and it's not fun to see all of it, but it just keeps me going. I still want to keep empowering and voicing my opinions.
Sure. And now, some would say, you know, in this climate that we live in right now with school shootings and everything that was happening there in Parkland, Florida, some might say, you know, why show the handgun there? But what's your response to that?
Well, there's been a lot of attention over the past few years, especially to like sexual assault and particularly on college campuses. And so allowing people, specifically women, to be the first line of defense is imperative. So basically our Second Amendment, my constitutional right, shouldn't have to stop at a campus, you know. So that's kind of what I was trying to get at and trying to empower people, especially since they are trying to raise the age to buy a gun to 21, and it has gone pretty far in Florida. So I think it's very important to know that we should be able to protect ourselves.
And what is, for the future, what is your hope for the Second Amendment? I know that right now it's been under attack, but what are you hoping going forward for the Second Amendment?
Yeah, of course. Specifically, for me personally, I definitely want to be able to have protection everywhere that I go, especially on my college campus. So I just want it accepted. It's our constitutional right. I don't want it to stop at any point.
There we go. Now, even without the handgun, would you say that even you rocking that type of shirt, do you think that even would have had controversy too in the world that we live in too?
Yeah, I think that still would have had controversy. The firearm definitely pushed it over, but yeah, absolutely. I still think it would have been controversial for sure.
And now what we're taking a look at, all right, now we're looking at it. Now you definitely are over 15,000 retweets, getting very close to that 100,000 likes. And again, is this something that you ever imagined from a graduation picture?
No, absolutely not. I never imagined this, but I'm actually really happy that it happened because a lot of people have messaged me and said, wow, you inspire me to go get my carry permit or to protect myself, or you inspired me to know the importance of it is to protect yourself. So I love it. I'm very, very proud of the photo.
And what about for some people out there that have suffered through gun violence and maybe a victim of themselves? What do you have to say to those people that, as soon as they see a gun, they immediately freak out and don't like it? What do you say to them about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely terrible when somebody is a victim to gun violence, and I feel very, very sorry for those people. But I think it's also important to know that you should be able to protect yourself, and I hope going forward that these people do find ways to protect themselves. It is very, very sad. It's sad that guns do get in the wrong hands sometimes, but it is your Second Amendment right to carry and protect yourself, and it's very, very important.
There we go. There we go. And maybe just explain a little. You're a student out there in Tennessee, and what are your future plans?
I've been asked that so much recently. I have no idea, especially since this happened. This has opened a lot of doors and a lot of opportunities for me. So I have no idea. Right now I work for Turning Point USA, which is a conservative nonprofit, and I love it there. So hopefully I'll continue working there, and then whatever else opens, I guess we'll see. There you go. And do you think this might even open the doors for some speaking opportunities? Yeah, I hope so. I would love that. I hope so. I love to be able to voice my opinion and help empower people, so absolutely. There you go. And I believe next month already is the NRA convention. Who knows? You might even be up there. I hope so. That would be so fun. Yeah, that would be something to see, no doubt. All from a picture here, and now really now the world knows your name there and your picture here. Now I got to ask, before this picture, how many followers did you have before all this? Gosh, I think I had like 1,300. Oh, wow! I didn't. Yeah, I didn't have barely any. So you really rock. I mean, you're close to 50,000. Yeah. Yes. Was your phone just constantly buzzing with notifications? How did you stop that? It was funny because I was my notifications were actually on, and I was laying in bed one night and I just kept hearing vibrating, and I was like, maybe my phone's just like broken, and I didn't even look at it. And then the next morning I saw it and I was like, oh my, okay. So I ended up having to turn the notifications off because it was actually breaking my phone. But yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's something I don't think a lot of people really experience unless you're like a superstar celebrity or something. But how many? What have been some of the big embeds that have really got you some of these big followings from different media sources? Yeah. So I was on Fox and Friends yesterday. A lot of media has reached out to me and have asked me for interviews, and it's been stressful, but a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying the attention, but it is quite exhausting. And what's your family and friends think about all this? My parents are so supportive. They love it. My parents were there for my Fox interview, so they love it. And my friends are also very supportive. I have friends on both sides. So even my more left-leaning friends are very, very proud of me, and so I'm very grateful for the support that I have. Now, has some of your left-leaning friends pulled you aside? They're like, this is great, but do they kind of give you a long story, or what's their response been? No, most of them are like, this is great. We're happy that you voiced your opinion, and we hope that you continue to do it. So I've only had a couple friends who lecture me a little bit about it, but most of them know that I'm pretty set in my beliefs, so they're most likely not going to change it. But yeah, they're great. They're very supportive. There we go. Well, Brenda Spencer, thank you so much for calling in and sharing this photo that has just gone worldwide viral. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, no problem. Forget 1,000 words. It's worth more than 15,000 retweets and 100,000 likes. Boom. Thank you. All right, Brenda Spencer, once again, thank you so much for calling in, and we'll get you that link too. Thank you. Yep, you have a good one. You too. All right, thank you. And thanks again to our very own for that
interview there, Brenna Spencer there, viral picture going totally worldwide viral there. We'll be back here with more news now in just a second, everybody.
This is a Fox 10 News Alert.
All right, now we are going to some breaking news out here with a fire that is going on. We're at 15th Avenue and Broadway, and our photojournalist Rick Davis there is live on the scene. Rick, what can you tell us here?
Mike, I don't have a lot of information, but this is actually a first alarm fire that's burning 15th Avenue and Broadway in South Phoenix. High winds. I don't know if you can see those firefighters up on that ladder trying to get some water on the fire. They're coming at this in all different directions, and they're trying to come up with a plan to get this thing knocked down. But so far, the last 30 minutes or so, it's been spooling out a lot of heavy black smoke over here. Someone told me this may be a transmission shock.
Okay, so this is like a commercial fire here that you're dealing with, and two, it's a windy day as well. Is that concerning probably the Phoenix Fire as well?
Oh, that's a huge concern. You can see that they're using a ladder right now just to try and get some water on this fire, and I think they just laid a line right here that they just took, and they're going down that alley to try and fight it that way. You can also see that there are a lot of people, you know, there are some residential homes just to the south of here. Here's some people up on their roof taking pictures.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah, definitely. They're right on the roof there, and they've been there for some time. We saw those pictures a little bit earlier as soon as you got on the scene there, Rick. And, wow, yeah, that smoke is really coming up now.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I mean, with the high winds the way they are, the firefighters have their work cut out for them. They just brought in a command van, so they have all the resources here. It's just a matter of how to get a handle on this first alarm fire.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so this is definitely an ongoing situation, very fluid there for the Phoenix Fire. If you're just joining us here on Fox 10 Phoenix Facebook Live or fox10phoenix.com, this is a business fire happening at 15th Avenue and Broadway, right near there. And we're being told that it could possibly be that a transmission shop at this time, but Rick Davis there live on the scene. Rick, thanks so much here for that update. And if you get any new updates, we'll go right to you.
Okay, Mike.
Thanks, Rick. All right, so we continue to take a look here live on News Now. Thanks to everybody joining us here worldwide on Fox 10 Phoenix Facebook Live and News Now here. Let us know where you are watching from, so we know we have people from all over the country right here. All right, folks, it looks like that shot's going to be freezing up here. So if you want more details, head on over to fox10phoenix.com. More news now coming up in just a moment here. All right, folks, coming up next, we're going to take you out to Texas, where the Texas governor was just speaking with the Texas National Guard to talk about a little update there on the troops that are at the Mexico border right now. We'll have that for you in just a moment. I'm just cutting the last part of that out. So we'll have that for you in just a moment right here. Coming up right now.
Well, thank you all for being with us here today. I want to update you on where we are and take a few questions. As you know, the president has called for the National Guard to be deployed in Texas as well as across the entire border. And Texas is proud to make sure that we do our duty and we step up and we provide Texas National Guard to participate in this operation. As of today, there are 762 National Guard from Texas that are involved in this operation. That number is expected to increase at the rate of about 300 per week until it gets up to about the number of 1,400, which may be the total amount. That will vary depending upon circumstances on the ground. The morale of the troops is very high. I've heard that from General Cheney. I heard it from earlier today, and I've heard it firsthand from National Guard members who are on the ground. In fact, so much so that the National Guard is getting calls from some of their members who want to volunteer to participate in this operation. In addition to that, I have received phone calls from governors of other states who want to offer their National Guard to participate in this operation. This operation is necessary in order to deal with what has been an escalation of cross-border traffic. There has been an increase of more than 200% of people coming across the border without authority. There's been an increase of more than 200% of heroin coming across the border illegally. Stunningly and disturbingly, there's been an increase of more than 200% of MS-13 coming across the border. This is the cross-border activity is posing serious threats and dangers, not just to people in the border region, but people throughout the state of Texas as well as throughout the United States. Understand this. When an MS-13 gang member comes across the border, they don't intend to stay right there across the border. Their intention is to get to someplace like Houston or Dallas or Chicago or New York. It's our responsibility on behalf of our fellow Americans that we stop those MS-13 gang members before they get across the border. Or if they do get across the border, that we track them down and arrest them and detain them and either deport them or put them behind the bars or whatever justice may allow to make sure that we keep our communities as safe as possible. Now, that said, one thing that we do see from the cross-border activity that was reported to me in our briefing today are ongoing and expanded challenges by the people who live in the communities on the border. That includes concerns and challenges because of an increase in the number of stash houses, an increase in the number of vehicles that are out of control. What happens typically is that there will be drugs, in particular marijuana, smuggled across the border and then placed into a vehicle. That vehicle takes off and drives wildly out of control, and it imperils Texans and Americans who are lawfully driving down the road, who have their safety compromised because of the lawlessness that occurs because of the cross-border drug trade. So we are very grateful for the National Guard being a part of this process. Now, the National Guard is playing a complementary role to aid and support what the Border Patrol is doing. The National Guard is not going to be involved in the process of apprehending people who have come across the border illegally. Instead, the National Guard will be involved in activities such as surveillance. They'll be involved in activities such as flying Lakota helicopters. They'll be involved in a multitude of tasks that will ensure that the Border Patrol officers who were not actively engaged in the apprehension process along the border will be freed up from whatever their task was and will have the time and the ability to be more fully engaged in the apprehension process along the border. All of us share a multitude of goals, one of which is this, and that is we want to shut down the cartels and the gangs and the smugglers who are trying to import crime into the United States. With that, I'll be happy to take a few questions.
Right here.
Yes.
Caravans that were coming up a few weeks ago, have they been dispersed or are they still, did they be moved?
Listen,
there was concerns the MS-13 could mix in.
For the most part, they have been dispersed. There may still be a few people, but there's something very important about that, and that is the reason why the National Guard was called up has nothing whatsoever to do with the caravans. The reason why the National Guard was called up has to do with this ongoing increase in cross-border activity. The cross-border activity, when I say activity, I mean people who are coming into the United States illegally and people who are bringing drugs and other contraband into the United States illegally. That has been on the rise for over a year. When I say an increase, if you look at March of last year to March of this year, there's been a more than 200% increase in the number of people coming across the border without authority and the number of drugs, especially heroin, that's being brought across the border illegally. And it didn't just spike in 1 month. If you look at it on a page, you see a gradual uptick. We are on a trajectory that would put us along the lines of the devastatingly high cross-border activity that we saw in years like 2014. And so the president was right to call for this action now before the situation got out of hand.
Right here, white shirt. Do we know how much all of this mission is costing? Because we've spoken to some officials locally and they believe the money could be going to maybe local law enforcement or other things.
Well, as far as I know, the money is going through the Department of Defense. And as a result, that money would not be available for any of these other multitude of purposes that people say that money could go toward.
Do we know how much?
I don't know. I would have to refer you to the Department of Defense.
Sanchez. Could you expand upon what the duties will be and how it will be different from before? Will you still be patrolling on the trails and mentioned surveillance or using aerostats? What kind of
They will be involved in both air and land-based missions. In air, primarily Lakota, which they are trained at, and on land, typically surveillance. We are still awaiting the final instructions from Homeland Security as well as Department of Defense. But it's our understanding that they will in no way be involved in any type of apprehension or confrontation process. Instead, their role will be to provide the multitude of functions that Border Patrol officers typically provide who are not engaged in action on the front lines of apprehension. What this is a force multiplier because by adding the National Guard to perform all these other functions, it frees up the Border Patrol to have what they call more badges on the border.
We have time for two more. White shirt right here. Governor, we were talking about a steady rise increase over the last year, especially as you can compare to last year, of course. But if you look at the last several decades, it's considerably low. What do you say to the critics of the deployment who say that this is not necessary? 100 or 1,000 troops down here, is merited because of such a low number.
Right. I would say to those critics that they need to look at the information as opposed to their own belief, because what the real facts show, if you look at all the years going back a decade, you will see the rise that we are dealing with right now is at a substantially high level. The facts, as opposed to supposition, the facts are that the cross-border activity is something that has been growing over the past year and has escalated to a point that has gotten at the level that was the dangerous levels of past years when action was taken.
Border Patrol members to address and make this point that it's been the last 4 decades, you think that it's actually slowed down?
If they're using Border Patrol numbers, then they will see that the increase from last March to this March was a steady rise that has led to a 200% increase. If they were using, if they were using Border Patrol numbers, they would see that there's been more than a 200% increase in the number of MS-13 gang members who are coming in. If they're using Border Patrol numbers, they would show that actually there was a 5 or 6 time-fold increase in unaccompanied minors and family units that have come in here recently. And so what just the Rio Grande Valley sector is dealing with alone, not the entire state, just the Rio Grande Valley sector alone, is more than 450 apprehensions per day. And so it has gotten back to levels that are very high based upon what we've seen over the past decade.
Last question right here, for sure. President Trump had requested National Guard troops to stay here until the border wall is built. Is that a timeline that you agree with?
I believe that the federal government has a duty and responsibility to secure our border. The reason why Texas called out the National Guard to begin with, first with Governor Perry and then myself, and the reason why the state of Texas deployed additional Texas Department of Public Safety officers to the border region is because the federal government had not done its duty to secure our border. As a result, Texas appreciates all the assets that the federal government is bringing to the border because that is the federal government's job. And we expect the federal government to continue to do its job to secure the border.
Thanks, guys. We got to run. Appreciate it. Will we see an increase in UPS prejudice as a result of this?
All right, folks, now we are taking live to the House floor right now where congressmen and women continue to talk.
Excited about the process of marking it up in committee, coming to this House floor, having those fulsome conversations with our colleagues about what's working, what's not working, and then getting this to the president's desk once the Senate does their work. So a great step for the Ag Committee today. I'm proud of the work we've done and look forward to working with my colleagues to get this even further along the path. And with that, I yield back to my colleague from Pennsylvania, the chairman of the Subcommittee on Nutrition, G.T. Thompson. Thanks,
Chairman, thanks again. Thanks for your leadership. Thanks for leading what has been one of the most transparent processes. The amount of hearings that we've had, over 20 hearings just on nutrition, 80 witnesses, job well done. You know, there's a saying that I think we've always heard it, the doctor knows best. So I'm pleased to recognize another member of the Agriculture Committee, a physician who really understands health and healthy nutrition, Dr. Marshall from Kansas.
Well, thank you for the gentleman from Pennsylvania for yielding me some time today to speak on one of my favorite topics. Perhaps I look at the importance of SNAP through a different set of lenses than some of my peers have said among me. I spent nearly the last 30 years as a physician counseling and advising expecting moms. Starting a family is a special and scary time for many of my patients. Almost all of them would come to me with a list of questions and problems. And despite all the variety of their concerns, many could be solved with proper and improved nutrition. SNAP assisted many of my patients in providing nutrient-dense foods for my mothers and children. The importance of nutrition in the weeks prior to conception, during pregnancy, while breastfeeding, and within the early years of infancy can never be overestimated. In the United States, 1 in 8 people identify as being food insecure. To put that into perspective, of the 5,000 babies I delivered, 625 of them are food insecure today. The thought of this alone weighs on our hearts and makes them heavy. And that's why I'm so proud of this Farm Bill's nutrition component and why we work so hard to get it right. Our Farm Bill increases nutrition education, incentivizes our SNAP recipients to make healthier choices, and increases access to nutritious foods. And for those people who live in our nation's food deserts with limited access to grocery stores, we thought about you too. We have to incentivize retailers to want to invest in these underserved communities. That's why we have extended and improved the Healthy Food Financing Initiative that gives grants to retailers to open businesses in areas that lack access to healthy foods. So I ask you today, how can anyone vote against a bill that looks at the food insecurity problem in this country from so many angles through the eyes of so many people? We all know that food is health, and that truly we are what we do eat. And this bill will help all Americans become more healthy and to stay more healthy. And that's why I'm so proud to support this bill and look forward to its passage, getting it on through the Senate and onto our president to decide. Thank you, and I yield back my time.
Well, I thank the gentleman. Thanks for being part of the special orders. This is a bill that was, all these hearings that we had were all bipartisan, great bipartisan input into in the hearings, and there's nothing in this nutrition title that really hasn't come out as a part of those hearings. In fact, I know my colleagues, my friends across the aisle, are Democratic members of the committee, which I've been so honored to work with and be a part of these hearings. They submitted specific priorities for the nutrition title under Title IV, and I'm proud to say that all those priorities actually are included within this farm bill. So now I'm pleased to recognize a friend of mine who's also part of our leadership with the Agriculture Committee, a subcommittee chairman from the 1st District of Arkansas. Chairman Crawford, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you, GT, for doing such a great job on this. I know you've worked really, really hard on it. And we've talked about the number of committee hearings that have been dedicated to just nutrition. That's because the nutrition title of the Farm Bill accounts for about 80% of the total authorization. So it's really important that we get it right. So I rise today to express support for Agriculture and Nutrition Act, specifically the improvements that we're making here in the critical nutrition title under the leadership of my friend, Mr. Thompson, who's done a fantastic job. Currently, there's a loophole related to heating and cooling allowances that's often used to artificially increase SNAP benefits. States are given the flexibility under this new bill to under the previous iteration of the SNAP program to use the standard utility allowances for heating and cooling to ease SNAP administration. Households automatically qualify for the SUA if they receive low-income heating and energy assistance program. It's called the LIHEAP program if they receive payments from that program. States, in order to increase SNAP benefits, provide LIHEAP payments of just greater than $20 minimum threshold, allowing households to qualify for the SUA, thus increasing the SNAP benefits the household receives, even though the household may not have actual heating and cooling expenses. Our bill requires demonstrated heating or cooling expenses in order to receive a standard allowance for such expenses. We basically remove the automatic availability of the SUA for heating and cooling and ask that households demonstrate actual utility costs to receive the state-determined SUA. Note that we exempt the elderly from that requirement of documentation, so we will make sure that people understand that they are not being adversely impacted. My home state of Arkansas is already demonstrating how to implement this practice. In our state, we currently require folks who want to be a part of this program and by extension eligible for SNAP to demonstrate that they in fact have utility bill expenses. This reform will take what my state is doing and implement it across the entire nation and ensure that SNAP's initial purpose of helping those who need this program the most is being achieved. Much of the frustration of my constituents and many folks across the country has been about the explosion of enrollees in programs who, quite frankly, don't really need the benefits in the first place and are deemed eligible through an administrative shortcut. It's my hope that more states will see this the same way that my home state of Arkansas does and realize that federal resources are not infinite, and being responsible stewards of this program serves those who need the serving the most. And if we enact this reform, they'll always be taken care of. And I want to thank the chairman again for his steadfast leadership and his diligence in all the hearings that we've had over the last 4 years. And with that, I will yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Thank you for being a part of this. And you know, the important special orders tonight were because nutrition matters and farmers feed. And I'm pleased to recognize another part of our agriculture committee leadership from the state of Illinois. He is the chairman of the Biotechnology, Horticulture, and Research Subcommittee. Actually did a great job yesterday convening a briefing where he brought in 4-H leaders from all over the country to share their experiences as a part of that great organization. And so I'm pleased to yield to Congressman Davis from Illinois 13.
Well, thank you very much to my colleague from Pennsylvania, Mr. Thompson, and also to all of the colleagues that I see on this floor who are part of the Agriculture Committee team. Man, we are a team, and a team that I got to watch work 4 years ago together to pass a bill that the Congressional Budget Office said was only going to save taxpayers $23 billion in mandatory spending. As a matter of fact, that was the largest single spending cut that was projected in my entire freshman term. Well, they come back over the recent weeks and told us that they were wrong. Those savings have actually been $111 billion in mandatory spending. This is why good policies matter. And the bill that we introduced today is an example of good policies that save taxpayer dollars, but just as importantly, it helps American families who are trapped in a cycle of poverty. They suffer from food insecurity and depend on SNAP to feed themselves and their families. And some of these men and women are capable of working, but they lack the access to adequate skills training to obtain a job that provides meaningful income and a chance to improve their family's future. We want to change that. Just like we wrote good policy 4 years ago, we've written good policy again because we are going to change that by shifting the anti-poverty conversation from one purely focused on benefits to one focused on helping someone climb the economic ladder and developing a strong workforce. We have created a streamlined, simplified work requirement paired with meaningful investments in workforce training. This Farm Bill requires and funds sufficient education and training slots, guaranteeing access to all SNAP participants subject to being able to work. And we've modernized the components of SNAP employment, education, and training to include assessment and case management, include additional options like supervised job search, apprenticeships, time-limited volunteer work, subsidized employment, and financial history. Last week, Caterpillar in Decatur, Illinois, hosted an event to recruit more welders and machinists. They have jobs available, but not enough people are trained to fill these skilled jobs. I visited the Bridgestone tire plant in Bloomington, Illinois last week, and I heard the same thing. Jobs are available, but no one to take them. Our economy is growing, jobs are growing. We must do more to get people the education and training that they need to take these available skilled jobs and help themselves and help their families. And thank you again to my colleague from Pennsylvania, and I yield back.
Well, I thank the gentleman for his leadership and for joining us here this evening. The Agriculture Committee, one of the things I really love about the Agriculture Committee is, quite frankly, what we do. I mean, everyone eats, and nutrition matters. And our Agriculture Committee is represented by members from all over the country, and including Tennessee. And so I'm pleased to yield to another member of the Agriculture Committee from Tennessee's 4th Congressional District, Representative Scott DeCharlet.
Well, thank you, Congressman Thompson. We really do appreciate your leadership on this issue. You're passionate about it. You spent so much time and effort to get this right, and it's really rare in this country where you can get so many people to come together, especially in these times, and agree on one thing. But when it comes to work-capable people between age 18 and 59 contributing to the workforce, about 80% of Americans agree on this. This is across the aisle. This is Democrats, Republicans, and Independents. And I'm telling you, it's hard to get people to agree on anything. But this is just such a common sense, humane thing to do. I don't fully understand who the 2 in 10 are that would disagree with this. Maybe they're people that are not working that are able-bodied. But at any rate, this is something that is designed to help lift people from poverty, break the cycle of debt, and get people to work and feel good about themselves. I mean, I would urge everyone listening to call their representatives and their senators and urge them to support this farm bill because it is well thought out. The time is right. The jobless claims are down in this country, yet there are people all over our districts that are clamoring to us about the lack of skilled workers. All throughout Tennessee's 4th District, there are people asking me, how do we get people to come and work? And here's a solution, that we have people that can go out and get good paying jobs, break the cycle, they're able to work, they're capable of working, but for some reason just haven't re-entered the workforce. And frankly, our government has made it too easy for people not to work. They've made it too comfortable. We've been bad parents. It's time to do the right thing. We all need to contribute to this country. We have record debts, and getting people back to work is the answer. But when you hear folks that are opposed to work requirements for people that are able-bodied, I just would ask you to ask them why. It does not help their self-esteem. It does not help their country. It does not help their families. And what we're offering here is an opportunity to work 20 hours a week. If you you are still in need of assistance, you will get it. If you don't have the proper training, this will allow you to get training. We're making this mandatory. So either you're going to become a part of the workforce, you're going to be trained to become part of the workforce, or you're simply going to choose not to work. And in that case, you might lose your food stamp benefits. But that's the whole point of this, is to help people make the right decision, make good choices. And again, 80% of the country agrees with this across the aisle. So there should be no real controversy, GT, on this. There should be no reason that people don't want to support this bill. It's the right thing to do. It's the right time. There's jobs available. And it's just simply a matter of people breaking that cycle, getting out, contributing, feeling good about themselves again. And I really can't understand why we have opposition to this great piece of work you put together. And it's great that it's coming in the form of the Farm Bill. So, I stand in strong support of this, and I'm grateful for your work and the work of so many on the committee and the members and the staff to, help get people in the right place, back to work, and still protecting and preserving the safety net program that's vital for so many people.
Well, I thank the gentleman. Thanks for being a part of the Agriculture Committee. Thank you for your great work on behalf of the folks in Tennessee.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Yeah, as the gentleman from Tennessee was saying, what we're talking about is, the part of the nutrition title is really looking at making improvements with it. We're not really doing anything to people. We want to do things for people, and quite frankly, for 65% of the folks who find themselves in a situation where they're on the SNAP program or Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. I don't want to say nothing's going to change, but it's just going to get better. We're going to get them greater access to healthy foods. 65. Those are 65% of the folks that are under the age of 18, that are over the age of 65, or living with a disability. And so for the 35% that find themselves on this program, usually for temporary times, it's because of financial situations. And that's their number one need. They're unemployed, underemployed. Maybe they've been living in poverty for generations. And yes, we want to provide that safety net for food, but we want to provide them actually an on-ramp to opportunity, as you talked about. And we don't force anybody to do anything. If you are able.
All right, folks, welcome back here to the News Now, out live right now. Well, we've been telling you all day today here on News Now, especially about the low visibility warnings because of potential blowing dust here in the area. And this is what you're looking at. This is State Route 347 right now, southbound, closed at Riggs Road due to this low visibility. All traffic being diverted to Riggs Road there. So take a look at this. Yeah, that is not what you want to be caught up in, definitely, when you're out on the roadways there.
And I can say, Chairman Thompson, it has been a pleasure to serve for the last 15 months under your leadership on the Nutrition Subcommittee. The reforms that we're seeking to implement in H.R. 2 in the SNAP program in this 2018 Farm Bill are truly intended to assist people out of dependency and into employment. I have heard from so many employers throughout my district in the Catskills and Hudson Valley and in central New York that they have jobs available, but they simply can't find qualified people to meet those jobs and to fulfill those responsibilities. In fact, this morning in the Budget Committee, we had the director of the Congressional Budget Office before us, and one of the topics that was raised was the fact that there are very low workforce participation rates among people, able-bodied people between 18 and 65 in our nation. And this is part of the problem. That we have a workforce participation rate nationally of approximately 63%. A number of the counties that I represent in the 19th Congressional District in New York State, that workforce participation rate for able-bodied, employable people between 18 and 65 hovers at 60% or slightly below 60%. There are plenty of jobs that are there, but unfortunately people do not have the skills, the training, sometimes the work ethic, and the notion of what it means to get up and go to work every day and meet the need of that employer and customers of that employer. So this is a real serious issue in our country. And if we're going to deal with the looming fiscal crisis that we have for mandatory spending programs like Social Security and Medicare, for instance, we need to get more people in the workforce. We need to create more opportunities to give people a hand up and not simply a handout. Now, one of the things that is truly important about the SNAP reforms that Chairman Thompson and Chairman Conaway are leading the way in H.R. 2 on in this 2018 Farm Bill is we are going to make it easier for people who are on the SNAP program to qualify for the program without having every nickel of any asset that they possibly have to count against their qualification. So, for instance, this legislation will allow a family on SNAP to have a savings account of up to $2,000 without that counting against the asset test. Today, that simply isn't the case. So a family that might need money for fixing their car or having their kids go to the orthodontist or the dentist, or some other kind of family emergency to buy a washing machine, for instance, they're not even allowed under SNAP asset test rules to have a $2,000 savings account. That's wrong, and it's simply an outmoded notion that we have precluded that. The other thing that I think is very interesting in this proposal, in this reform proposal, is that we're going to raise the asset test on a value of an automobile from about $4,650 to $12,000. I represent a rural part of upstate New York. My district is larger than the state of Connecticut. Many times people have to drive 40, 50 miles one way to get to a job. Well, we can't expect someone who's struggling with difficult economic circumstances for them or their family to be able to qualify for SNAP and have an asset of a vehicle, which they need desperately to get to work every day. We can't have that asset limited to a $4,600 vehicle. So this legislation, which Chairman Thompson and Chairman Conaway are spearheading, would raise that vehicle asset test up to $12,000. So these are logical, rational things. That asset test has been at $4,650 for many decades now. And so these are the kind of common sense reforms that are contained within this proposal that I hope our colleagues on the other side of the aisle will pay heed to and carefully study, because we welcome their
All right, folks, we lost that shot, but we are getting an update on that fire that we were bringing you a little bit earlier ago.
And you just put it out.
In a situation, that's the obvious. The wind is the big factor, the enemy, the factor, the driving force on a day like today, yeah?
Yeah, the wind right now is our enemy. The wind right now is not making it easy on us. I mean, we've got wind gusts where we just talked to firefighters. They said they had areas where they pulled back all the scrap metal, got to the seat of the fire, thought they put it out, turned around, that area is on fire again. So, I mean, obviously these are very difficult fires to fight to begin with. And then we throw in 50, 60 mile an hour gusts with winds, and it's a long day for these guys.
And bottom line, nobody hurt.
Right. So the bottom line right now, nobody hurt, including firefighters. Luckily, the shop evacuated. It's just a fire that is jumping all over that back lot for us right now. Probably a first alarm fire. So we probably have 4 engines, 2 ladders, support groups. We balanced it to a second alarm. We were running out of hose lines. We were running out of personnel on deck. We need to have, anytime we have a fire like this, we also need to make sure that we have enough personnel on deck to rescue folks inside the hot zone. So we had a situation where we didn't have any folks on deck, and we had 20, 30 firefighters working inside the hot zone. So command balanced it to a second alarm.
You knew today was going to be a windy day, but can you really prepare for something like this?
You can't prepare for something like this. I know personally today I've been on 5 working fires since 11 o'clock this morning. Right now as we speak, we have 2 others in the city of Phoenix. I don't want to say coincidence. You can't. I mean, obviously, wind is our enemy on these fires. So, I mean, just a crazy day for us right now. The Phoenix Fire Department, we've got right now no less than 40 trucks across the valley fighting fires. Right, unknown right now. These body shops, transmission shops, it's really hard it takes a few days to figure out how it started, but caustic materials, metals, you've got cars, you've got oil in the tires, so many ignition points, it's unsure right now.
Is there any, is the fire out at this point?
Right, so the fire is deemed under control. We're just putting out hot spots. We're gonna be out here for a while. We're gonna have cranes picking up metal. We've got cars, the tires that are going to be smoldering. Tires are filled with oil. We're going to be out here quite a bit. We're going to be fire watch on this throughout the night. We're going to, as soon as the last crew that leaves, probably sometime tonight, they're going to be back here on a fire watch every hour to make sure it didn't reignite.
Rob, any issues with fire hydrants around here?
There was. Anytime we get down in this part of the town, we do what we call long lays, 1,000-foot lays into here. We had 2 plugs that were not functional for us when we got here. We trained for that. We know what to do, move on to the next one, but it's a delay. So we had to deal with plugs that were not functioning for us. Luckily, these crews, these Southside crews, they know it. Been there, done that, trained for it. Hey, on to the next one, but it was a delay.
Any cause of delay that happens?
It's tough to say down here. We have long runs of mains to where they're not open for quite a bit, right? So they don't tap into it. We have empty fields that don't need water. So if they've had a pipe that was malfunctioning or a gate that wasn't working, it's only exposed when we use it on a fire, not when somebody opens up the spigot in their kitchen, because there's no homes around here. So we just don't have that daily function of water that we normally do.
What is this going to the air quality in the neighborhood? I noticed some of the officers over there had masks on.
Yeah.
On top of the dust that everyone's dealing with, what does this kind of add and spread around?
So obviously air quality on any fire is a concern for us. High winds, believe it or not, is forcing it out quickly. So if there's any silver lining, if it's a calm, still day, that smoke's going to sit, bank down. That smoke is gone. That smoke's already in Tempe by now. So air quality, we have our officers, we've been telling them now in the past couple of years, we'd like them to use masks. They do such a great job shutting down traffic for us, and they're sort of the unknown secondary danger to them is that they breathe that air for hours. 20-year cop's been on fires his whole career, so we're trying to get them to wear masks as well.
Thanks.
Unknown right now. Pretty close. Yeah, Rob and Dave, MCDADE, Captain, Phoenix Fire Department.
Did you say at least 7 fires you guys have responded to today?
Yes, 7 fires.
Okay.
No, auto repair.
Okay, so that was the update there from fire official on just how much this terrible wind is really causing trouble for firefighters as they're battling really all over the city today. You're watching News Now. More updates coming up next. We're going to show you just a little bit more of that State Department briefing that we didn't get to show you.
Of Hamas, a member of Hamas's armed wing, and with the equivalent rank of captain, and that he was disguising himself as a journalist. And I want to know, I mean, if he was in fact vetted and approved by USAID for a U.S. taxpayer grant, either the USAID vetting process is not very good, or it allows for a potential possible Hamas militant to get U.S. funding, or the Israeli defense minister is wrong.
All I can say is that we're looking into that. Okay, we're looking at all of this. Go ahead.
Allow me just one last question.
Yes, go ahead.
Today, the Israeli Minister of Defense, Lieberman, told the Jerusalem Post, an Israeli newspaper, that there are no civilians in Gaza. Do you have any comment on that?
I do not. I do not.
Would you look into that, please?
If I have an answer for you, I will give it to you, certainly. Okay. Okay. Leslie, did you have something else?
Because you keep saying you're looking into it. I'm trying to figure out, is that you talking to the Israelis about the way this happened? Or, I mean, what kinds are you doing an independent?
That's typically what we do. We talk to other governments. We talk with officials and sources on the ground from different sides and gather information and facts. Okay, that's all I have. Hi, Jenny.
Thank you, Heather. When the United States and North Korea summit talks on May or June, will the North Korea human rights issue be raised at the talks?
Yeah. Typically, when we have the opportunity to sit down and talk with countries where we have tremendous differences, that is something that does come up. I imagine that would come up as well. However, denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, which is something that Kim Jong-un said that he is willing to abide by and willing to work toward. I think that is obviously the top conversation. Other things may come up as well.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So Kim Jong-un has said he's willing to work towards denuclearization, but is the U.S. government confident that both your definition and his definition match up? Like, does he agree to complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization, or does he have a different definition in mind?
I can't speak for him. I can't speak for his government.
Can you speak to, does the U.S. feel confident that you both mean the same thing when you're talking about that?
And that is something that the president has determined. And I can't speak for the president, but I can say that when they say they are ready to denuclearize, and we will have conversations about that, we go into those meetings in good faith, hoping for the very best. And so we look forward to having those conversations. Okay, Josh, hi.
On Qatar,
I'll come back to you. Okay.
In the Oval Office this morning, the president had a very different assessment of Qatar's, status on terror funding than he did a year ago. Ironically, his today seemed to line up more with the Secretary of State that he recently fired. And I'm wondering if it's accurate to say that at this point Qatar has resolved U.S. concerns as expressed by the president last year about funding for terrorism.
Yeah. So I think a lot of this is a work in progress. They have made some progress, certainly. On March 21st, less than a month ago, they publicly announced designations of 20 terrorist financiers and 6 entities under its new domestic designations authority. So that's certainly a step in the right direction. We continue to call on all sides of this GCC dispute to come together, to refrain from the type of rhetoric that would make it difficult for them to come together. We have long talked about how this can affect our overall war on terror and efforts in the Middle East, and some of those countries have had to pay a price as a result of their eye being taken off the ball. So we continue to have those conversations with the Qatari government.
As far as resolving that dispute, basically all sides of this dispute say, we're dug in, there's been essentially no progress, this isn't going anywhere. But the president had put it very different today. He said, we're working on unity in that part of the Middle East, and I think it's working out very well. There are a lot of good things happening.
Okay.
Are there any examples of good things that are happening as far as resolving the Gulf crisis? That
I wasn't in those meetings, so I don't have a full readout of exactly what took place. I can tell you that our acting Secretary John Sullivan will be meeting with the Qataris later this afternoon in a meeting here at the State Department. So we'll see what comes out of that. I hope that we'll be able to provide you a readout.
The rhetoric has been elevated between Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Both of them are your allies. Now they're talking about building a canal that will turn Qatar into an island.
I think the rhetoric, if you all remember, is better now than it was last summer. Not where it needs to be, but we're certainly, I think we're in a better spot.
Look at the press. I think it's frightening. I'm saying that some of the projects would be a canal that would cut off Qatar, turn it into an island. I don't know.
I've certainly seen that. Yes, I have.
So
and that would.
That you would
That would be something that we don't think benefits the dispute. That only exacerbates the dispute. So talk like that, suggestions like that, only serves as a setback, and I think we've been clear with those countries about that kind of rhetoric.
In what way have we been clear with the Saudis that we think the embargo should be lifted? Has that, when and where has that taken place?
I don't have readouts of any of those meetings right now, but I know that we've made those made that clear.
But we're confident enough that the Qataris have done enough that I believe the State Department yesterday or last night announced an intention to sell advanced weapons.
I don't have anything for you on that.
$300 billion.
Okay, I'll take a look into that. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Hi.
Hi. Quick question on China and Taiwan. Do you have any information and the timing of the second U.S.-China diplomatic and security dialogue? Separately, are the tensions?
Okay, let me answer your first one first. And I think you're referring to the dialogue that we had last year, the four-part dialogue with President Xi and other members of his government. I don't have any meetings, any plans to be able to provide you today about that. So I'll let you know when we have something to announce. Okay, your second part is?
Are the trade tensions between Washington and Beijing have any repercussion on the four annual high-level dialogue between U.S. and China?
I don't think so. And I think the president spoke about this yesterday and then just a short while ago today, talking about how we will continue to have conversations with the Chinese government, and in particular with President Xi. The president not long ago said, I'm very thankful for President Xi of China's kind words on tariffs and automobile barriers, also his enlightenment on intellectual property and technology transfers. We will make great progress together. So I think what we may be seeing is China coming to terms with some of our concerns about unfair trade practices, and the United States saying, you know, we stand by to engage with you, the government of China and President Xi on that matter.
On Taiwan, today is
my best estimation of that, and I've not spoken with the president today, but my best estimation of that is basically what came out of President Xi's speech. And in President Xi's speech that he gave at a forum recently, he spoke about economic reform. He spoke about market opening. Those are the types of suggestions that China has made for some time. But if they're willing to make progress on that and step in the right direction, we certainly remain open to engaging them.
So that he believes that President Xi has been enlightened.
Possibly. Yeah. He used that word. So, okay. Go right ahead. Nike, let me go on to somebody else. Hi.
Just the same topic. So do you see the risk of the trade war between the United States and China has been reduced, if not diminished?
I think we're at a good point where we're having conversations. We've been clear with the Chinese government, areas that are of concern to U.S. workers, U.S. companies, and the overall trade balance. We have had those conversations with them, so I think we're looking like we're in a better place.
But the Chinese government officials actually saying there's no negotiation going on right now. So I'm wondering if you could confirm if there are talks between the two sides about trade issue right now.
We have had conversations, government to government. As you all know, our Ambassador Branstad was.
All right, folks, we are going to take you out live here in Arizona, where we are expecting a major announcement from Governor Doug Ducey on Arizona teacher pay. That's coming up next here on News Now. As you know, this has been a movement, a national movement, really, starting out there in West Virginia, in Oklahoma, and even here in Arizona, teachers demanding more pay and more funding for their classrooms. We're going to listen here in just a moment.
I didn't know if you wanted
They were pushing. Stick them under there.
All right, folks, we're just adjusting the camera here. It'll come back here in just a second.
trucks parked on 17th. Yeah.
We did. Thank God for Barbara left. She told good. What's he doing out there? He's stirring up a lot of trouble.
Aaron.
Oh, yeah. What is he doing? Oh, he's just harassing us. No, he's recruiting PCs. He's registering voters. He's got his ground game going full force.
So is he going to try again?
He's got to be relevant. He might run for a school board seat to stay that way. But what he's doing is replaying the ground game that he and Kelly did last year.
You guys going to get any more bills out here?
Well, it's a good day for teachers in Arizona. In the last 3 years, we've been able to put $1.7 billion into our public schools. Given where our budget was when I took office in 2015, this was a substantial amount, but there's more needed. K-12 education is a box that we will never check. We'll never stop improving because when it comes to our kids, we must never stop working for them. One way we work for our kids is by rewarding our teachers. Arizona's economy is growing, and with a growing economy comes more revenue. I've said I'm on the side of the teachers, and I've been listening, and we've been working. That is why today I'm proposing we boost our proposed teacher pay increase to 9% this year. Combined with what we did last year and with our commitment over the next 2 years, this will result in a net pay increase of 20% by the beginning of school year 2020. Now here's how it will work. Last year's budget combined with this year's budget will result in a 10% increase in teacher pay. In the base, ongoing, inflated. Next year's budget will include another 5% increase. The year after that will include another 5%. That combined with the pay increase provided last year means by the beginning of the 2020 school year, every Arizona teacher will have received a cumulative raise of 20%. So what does this mean specifically? Well, today, the average teacher pay in Arizona is $48,723. If we pass this plan, it will increase to a projected $52,725 by the new school year this fall. By the beginning of the 2020 school year, the projected average teacher salary will be $58,130. Now we know that there are other needs in public education, so there will be no shell games. This investment is in addition to the $371 million in district additional assistance, which will provide flexible funding for Arizona schools' most pressing needs: fixing school infrastructure, modernizing curriculum, school buses, and updating classroom technologies. We can do this and do it in a responsible and sustainable way. In the days ahead, I'll be working with legislative leadership on passing a final budget. As a result of Arizona's thriving economy and a record population of 7 million plus residents, the state's revenues are on the rise. Combined with a reduction in state government operating budgets through strategic efficiencies, caseload savings, and a rollback of some of the governor's office proposals included in the fiscal year 19 executive budget, more dollars are available to invest into two of Arizona's most important priorities: Arizona's teachers and Arizona's classrooms. The budget process is coming to a close, and I hope everyone had a good spring break because it's going to be a long weekend, and we're going to be working through the weekend. I believe the legislature is in line with that, and I know we can get this done. We've done big things before, and with the help of everyone here, and I want to thank all the people that are here and that have combined and contributed to this plan, including our teachers, our superintendents, our educational champions, and legislators and legislative leadership. So let's get this done. Thank you. Well, our commitment in this budget proposal is to our teachers. Our economy has been growing. We have surplus revenues, and we're going to put these towards teacher pay. That'll be the commitment. We'll have to make other adjustments. We've been through ups and downs in our economy before. Our economy is on the rise. We have balanced our budget. We maintain a healthy rainy day fund. So I'm confident that we'll be able to weather a storm if it comes. There's not one on the horizon at this time.
Governor, quick question. That's back of the napkin math, $272 million for teacher pay for that 8%. Is that pretty close?
You're pretty good, Bob. It's $274 million in this year's budget for teacher pay.
It's journalist, man. So let's talk about some of the priorities you said that you're not going to do. You were talking about a tax cut for military pension. You had things about wrong-way drivers. Are all those gone now?
It's going to be a long weekend, Howie. I'm going to be working with the people standing behind me to negotiate this final budget. The commitment in this budget and the priority in this budget is going to be to the teacher pay increase.
Governor, 10% is supposed to be the base. What about the next two 5% years? Are those also to the base?
Yes, base and inflated.
So, Governor Redford wanted 20% now. You're offering 20% over 3 years. You have some supporters up there in the crowd behind you. What's your message to Redford right now?
Well, I think the message today is, first I want to say that I've been listening and I've been impressed. But the winners today are the teachers in the state of Arizona. If some others want to claim credit, they're more than welcome to jump on the bandwagon.
Well, is there anyone who hasn't asked a question who has one? That goes to the other part of the question, Governor. Very clearly, this occurred 24 hours. I know this is not something just cooked up overnight. 24 hours ago, teachers in half of the schools walked in, showed they were committed. How much of your decision to do this was based on that teacher support? Remember, you had originally proposed 0.4% per year. So tell me how much.
This teacher pay is something we've been talking about for some time. Through the school safety meetings that we had with teachers and superintendents, teacher pay came up in those discussions as well. But I have been paying attention to what's going on out across the state. And like I said, I've been listening and I've been impressed. And we're working with legislators that have the same commitment to K-12 education and our teachers as I do. And we were able to put this plan together. And now it's time to get it passed. Thanks, everybody.
All right, folks, and that's going to do it for us here today on News and Now. Thanks so much for joining us here at Fox10Phoenix.com. We just heard the latest from Governor Doug Ducey announcing that he wants to raise Arizona teacher pay by 20% by 2020. That is the very latest here out of Arizona. We'll be back here with more News Now tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.